All right, guys. Well, we continue our study, and we're looking at the book of Proverbs. Sorry to move this phone a little bit. And book of Proverbs, chapter 7. Chapter 7. And the subject of this chapter continues from chapter 6. And if you remember, the topic is women who try to lure men away. And Solomon continues to warn his son. So, Proverbs chapter 7, verse 1. Says, "My son, keep my words and treasure my commands within you. Keep my commands and live, and my law is as the apple of your eye." Verse 3, "Bind them on your fingers, write them on the tablet of your heart. Say to wisdom, you are my sister, and call understanding your nearest kin." So Solomon said a similar phrase in chapter 3 and 4, if you remember. Apple of your eye. Apple of your eye. This means having value, So the point there is, remember the value and the love, wisdom, remember value and love, wisdom from above. Value it. See it as treasure. See it as important. See it as imperative to your everyday life, because wisdom is. If you live by God's wisdom, you'll be resistant to that temptation, that flattery that would lead to sin. So really the point of Proverbs 7, I think, is to resist. A consistent resistance against temptation that leads to sin. And he says that they may keep you from the immoral woman, from the seductress who flatters with her words. So in order to be kept away from sin, what we have to do is love wisdom and walk in wisdom. Verse 6 says, at the window of my house I looked through my lattice, and I saw among the simple, I perceived among the youths a young man devoid of understanding. So this is an illustration of the road that lacks wisdom will lead to what? Verse 8 and 10. Here's what it will lead to. The road that you're walking on that is opposite of wisdom, here's what the result will be. Passing along the street near her corner, and he took the path to her house. In the twilight in the evening, in the black and dark night, and there a woman met him with the attire of a harlot and a crafty heart. So the harlot was cunning, and this guy was not walking in wisdom, so he was getting lured away. So he was lured away from what was right and true. And so we have to beware, we have to be careful, we have to watch, if you will, our steps, which way we're going, what we're doing. We have to be intentional when it comes to living this life as believers. And then verse 11, she was loud and rebellious. Her feet would not stay at home. At times she was outside, at times in the open square, lurking at every corner. So this temptress was loud, she was stubborn, and seemed to be everywhere. I tell the congregation sometimes, right outside that door is a ton of temptations. Inside here, you're safe, right? We're all together. We're worshiping God. We're focusing on Jesus, right? We're hearing his word, getting spoken to by God. But right when we leave this place, outside of the door, there's temptation around every corner, on the billboards, on your phone, at your job, wherever you are, there's temptation just in your mind. And so that's like this temptress, She was trying to be sneaky. She was trying to pull this guy down into sin. But it's true that temptation is everywhere. Again, the theme, I believe, is to resist. Resist it continually. Verse 13 of Proverbs 7. So she caught him and kissed him with an impudent face and said to him, I have peace offerings with me. Today I have paid my vows. Verse 15. So I came out to meet you diligently to seek your face, and I have found you. She made a pass for this man and sought for him, and she wanted him to partake of the sin, right? She was pulling him in. She wanted him to partake in that temptation, which would be to engage in sin, in the snare of sin, really. Snare is like a trap. And so we have to be careful because the enemy can use people, he can use places, he can use things, he can use a lot of different things in order to try to cause you and I to stumble. And we have to be aware of those things so we can resist them, so we can run away from them, so we can recognize them and just be out of there. Verse 16 says, I have spread my bed with tapestry, colored coverings of Egyptian linen. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let us take our fill of love until morning. Let us delight ourselves with love. For my husband is not at home. He has gone on a long journey. He has taken a bag of money with him and will come home on the appointed day. So this this bed or this couch or whatever, it was adorned, it was decorated, it was alluring, it looked good, in other words. Sin is dressed up to look good. Do you know what I mean? That fruit that Eve was tempted with, it didn't look rotten. It didn't look gross. It wasn't like, oh, that's disgusting, I don't want that. It looked good. And maybe at the time, they were hungry. And they just longed for a piece of fruit. The enemy knows how to tempt us. He knows our weaknesses. And sin is dressed up beautifully, but is barren inside. Once you give into it, you see the emptiness, and it's horrible. But sin is dressed up to look nice, right? To look like exciting, to look like, oh, I gotta, be a part of that. It leaves a person empty and depressed. And then verse 18 and 20, basically this harlot is attempting to talk this guy into sinning. The enemy just loves to talk you into getting away from God, to putting this thing down, to quit going to church, quit praying. Why are you seeking God? You're wasting your time. Do that later. Have your fun right now. That's the enemy's lies. Those apart from the Lord will try and talk those in the Lord away from the Lord. Do you know what I mean? Like, why are you going to church? Come out with us. Come hang with us. Look, we're doing this, we're doing that. You love that, right? And it's like we have these lures, these distractions, these things try to pull us away. But God says resist and he will make a way of escape. Don't you love that? It's almost like if you're tempted, maybe this has happened to you, if you're tempted at some point, all of a sudden you get a phone call right when you're about to give in. And you're like, okay, Lord, that's the way of escape. Take the way of escape. Resist those temptations. Verse 21 says, with her enticing speech, she caused him to yield. With her flattering lips, she seduced him. So there was like where temptation turned into transgression, right? We're tempted. Temptation is not sin. Temptation is something before you and you have a choice to say, I'm going to take the way of escape or I'm going to transgress, because transgression is like, I know it's wrong, but I'm going to do it anyway. We don't want to get to that place ever, right? But this guy gave in. Guy in Proverbs 7 gave in. And verse 22, immediately he went after her, as an ox goes to the slaughter, or as a fool to the correction of the stocks. Man, so what this means is that he was led by lust. He was led by lust and incapable of resistance, which is not true. We're capable of resistance. We just have to actively get up and go the opposite way of that sin and that temptation, right? We are all capable of resisting those temptations that daily face us, right? We are all capable. We have control over what decisions we make. You're not forced to do anything. You have free will. God's given you that. And so when temptation is before you, turn the other way. Say, no, I don't want to do that. No, I'm not going there. No, I'm not going to partake in that. I have no desire to. It looks good on the outside, but take a bite of it, partake in it, empty, alone, confused. Verse 23, till an arrow struck his liver as a bird hastens to the snare. He did not know it would cost his life. He was caught in sin and his end was destruction, right? Sin never makes anything better. It's obvious. It's almost like, why do you even need to say that? Well, because the enemy makes it look so good that we think it is better until we partake of it and realize this is horrible. Sin never makes anything better. It actually ruins. It ruins people. It ruins lives. It ruins families. It ruins everything. Verse 24 to 27, finishing us off, Proverbs 7. Now therefore listen to me, my children. Pay attention to the words of my mouth. Do not let your heart turn aside to her ways. Do not stray into her paths, for she has cast down my wounded, and all who were slain by her were strong men. Her house is the way to hell, descending to the chambers of death. Wow, that's intense. A great exhortation. And the whole summation of verse 24 to 27 is don't let your heart turn from the Lord. Don't let your heart turn from God. Turn from sin, away from it, and turn towards God. Change of heart, change of mind, change of direction. That's what it means to repent. Stay on the road of God's will, in the middle of his mission. Don't let sin lure you away. Don't let the enemy talk you into it. Don't let the world influence you to walk away from God. Don't let your flesh be fed. Starve your flesh by walking in the Spirit, and you'll be on the right road. Well, that was Proverbs chapter 7, you guys. God bless you. Talk to you next time.